Time's free. Right behind me.
Vice Mayor Strange, you'll address her properly.
You can kiss my foot.
Mr. Rickard, you're out of order.
FBI, we are asking you to investigate this council. Please look into this council, how they award contracts, the bid process, how they use their positions to benefit their friends and themselves, how they use their positions to attack residents and critics and neighbors and business competition. FBI, will you please look into this?
And I welcome the FBI here. If you notice, Mr. Thompson, with his plea for the FBI and his watchdog group, this city runs the cleanest in this whole county. I guarantee
He was served a federal subpoena this
We
morning.
did receive a subpoena this morning, and we're going to cooperate 100% with the subpoena. And
Most of you who were involved up here, you gaslighted me. You tried to say I was crazy. And now we know that that's not true. And there's a lot of other issues I've been asking about as well.
This is going to be a doozy tonight. I'm going to show you so much stuff. I cannot believe what happened today. WMBB ran a story, a smear tactic, actually, coordinated with the top officials in Lynn Haven to try to influence and tamper the election. I knew something was coming, and I should have known that it was this, because this is a trend. This is a pattern at this point, and I'll prove it to you. I'm going to show you tonight the story. I'm going to talk about in detail about the Lynn Haven officials and how they're tampering with the election. I'm going to tell you about the history between WMBB and this particular campaign manager, Arthur Cullen, whose candidates, by the way, often end up under subpoena after they become elected. And I think he brags about having a 26-0 record. See, the establishment will pick a candidate, and Arthur Cullen's very good at running campaigns. He's very good at that. I'm going to tell you why, of all people, Arthur Cullen is the last one who should be talking about anybody's arrest. This is not a show you're going to want to miss a minute of. I promise. So let's begin with the story that came out tonight. The story was a hit piece by WMBB. Lynn Haven police chief weighs in on the mayor election. Say what? That's highly inappropriate. The police chief? Can he do that? Is it legal? The answer is it's legal. Is it appropriate? Hell no. Who is his boss? See, I was a public affairs officer in the Air Force, and so I have a sense of what government should and shouldn't do. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say they shouldn't tamper with elections. And when you have a chief of police post on his Facebook page today the arrest record of one of the candidates for mayor, the police chief, carries a lot of weight. So who's his boss? Well, his boss is the city manager. Vicky Gaynor is his boss. And so evidently the city manager finds this to be appropriate. I haven't seen her speak out against it to say we need to take that down. We don't take a position on elections like this, especially at this time. Unbelievable. So I want to point out that it's not illegal to do that. It's just highly, highly inappropriate. Now, the candidate, Ellen Fields, was arrested 4 years ago. And last week on a debate on WMBB, she announced it. She hemmed and hawed. I would have done it a lot differently. I don't think she It's embarrassing if you get arrested, right? Here's how I would have done it. When the question about transparency came up, I don't have an arrest record. I did run for office, and they've, what Arthur Cullen does with his, with the help of his troops, is they'll find your most embarrassing moment and try to make that define you. So here's what I would have done. I would have said, just like those old film noir movies, I was arrested. No, I wasn't, but I would have said this if I was. I was arrested 4 years ago back in Spokane, and it's very embarrassing. It all happened back when my husband and I were in a tremendous emotional fight. And I would have told the story. She was released 3 hours later. It was dismissed with prejudice. And raise your hand if you have no embarrassing moments that you would want splashed on the front page of the paper. Now, here's my biggest interest in all of the Lynn Haven election. There's really 2. First of all, the 2 candidates for mayor, I don't think are very strong. Okay. One is unacceptable, Arthur Cullen's candidate. And they just don't know much about government. And it's frustrating to me that people run for office who don't know much about government, right? When Amy Hoyt last week on WMBB asked about should Lynn Haven institute a 1% sales tax like Panama City and Panama City Beach, here's what I would have said. There are 412 cities in Florida. Only 2 have a sales tax because they're illegal. Cities cannot institute a sales tax. That's why the city of Panama City Beach, in my First Amendment lawsuit against them, went to great lengths to say it's a merchant fee, not a sales tax, to which I pulled out a receipt and I said, why does it say sales tax? Cities can't do that. But they didn't know that. They did it a long time ago. There've since been legislation put in place. Cities can't do that. It would be as if I said, I want to run a diner, but I don't know anything about diners. I'm not qualified. Mike Thomas is. I'm not. I wish we could have more qualified candidates for positions as important as mayor. That's one thing, but I can't control that. Here's where maybe I can make a difference. Here's the second thing I want. And this is my other interest in the Lynn Haven race. In Bay County, I would like to have all of us say we don't want scorched earth tactics. We don't want to try to define people with their one worst moment. People are more than that. And you know it, and I know it, everybody knows it. I would like to see campaigns be a little less ugly in Bay County. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you like to see the discussion to be about policy rather than personality? I know I would. So let's take a look at this. The top official in Lynn Haven is the city manager. She runs the city. It's a city manager strong form of government. She's the boss of the police chief who did something so inappropriate today that he ought to resign. Chief Ricky Ramey should resign for what he did today. Now, I believe that they probably think, Vicki Gaynor, the city manager, and the police chief, they probably think, well, heck, if Arthur Cullen's candidate doesn't get elected, we're probably going to lose our jobs. There probably is going to be a different city manager down the road and a different police chief down the road. This is not the first time that these city officials have tampered with this campaign. Do you know that they told some of the candidates that they could not knock on doors and ask for votes? City manager Vicki Gaynor and police chief Ricky Ramey, they said they had to pay $100 for a soliciting permit if they're going to campaign in the neighborhoods. Now, that got to Supervisor of Election Mark Anderson, who wrote an email saying, no, that's not how it works. The First Amendment applies, and you don't get to do that. That's the second time the top officials in Lynn Haven have tampered with this election. Now, Police Chief Ricky Ramey says, if you see the article and saw the WMBB report, he says he just wants to make sure everybody has all the information is all. Well, I don't see you, saying you need all the information about the other candidate. And I'm not going to do that, by the way. I'm not going to go dig up the worst part of Jesse Nelson's life and say, well, look, he's just as bad. I'm not going to do it. But I will tell you that if Ricky Ramey, the police chief, was concerned that everybody's following the law and following the rules, well, maybe he could ask about, well, let's take a look at that candidate, Arthur Cullen's candidate. So this is Jesse Nelson. And I've circled something on his bayvotes.org bio. This is an official bio here. Talks about his doctorate degree in leadership. All right, so that's become a question. A doctorate degree in leadership, and he was asked about this, or he brought it up actually in the debate on WMBB recently. He brought it up, but he still didn't answer the question.
I consider that
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds response. I guess not getting to know anything about me, I guess a little disturbed by that, because from my understanding, you do ask a lot of questions about me. For example, where did I get my doctorate degree and other things? So you do ask quite a few questions about me, so you would know more about me. And our tents were beside one another, but you really didn't take the time to speak.
Okay, that enough of that. So just answer it. And this, it sort of reminds me when former councilman Panama City Beach, Hector Solis, ran for office. He said he was a retired federal law enforcement officer, but he never would get into details about it. And it raised a lot of questions, which I asked for about a year until he sued me for defamation and lost. We found out a lot. I'll share some of that with you too. So just say it. Just say, I got a doctorate degree in leadership at this college, and here it is. I put it right over mine are right up there. I don't have a doctorate degree. I have 2 master's degrees. So, but there is an academic paper that Jesse Nelson wrote just last year about racism and systemic racism and institutional racism, and being able to preach sermons, to make things better. It was a paper, an academic paper. Now, it was only 5 pages or 6 pages long, and there were only about 5 sources, and they were like YouTube links, which is not doctorate level writing. Burnie, how would you know? I taught college. I taught writing in college at Penn State, at Weber State, at Gulf Coast College. I taught college writing. That's about a freshman level paper. I'm just saying that is not doctorate level writing. Now, maybe he has a doctorate degree, but just clear it up. Just clear it up. There's enough questions about it that they're worth asking. Okay. And by the way, just so you know, it's illegal to call yourself a doctorate. Say you have a doctorate degree. It's illegal unless you really do. And I wouldn't do, if I ran for office, everybody knew I had those degrees. These are not questions that should be out there right now. And by the way, if you say, Burnie, what do you mean it's illegal? I'll show you. Florida statute. It's right here, and I'll give you the exact statute if you want to look it up. It's 817.567. Okay. No person in Florida shall claim to possess an academic degree as defined in the statute. And it goes on. You can read this. It talks about what kinds of colleges. It even talks about religious seminaries. And it says, by the way, no person shall claim, if you look at number 2 down there, either orally or in writing, the title doctor or any of that kind of stuff which signifies, purports, or is generally taken to signify satisfactory completion of the requirements of a doctorate degree. And by the way, it's a misdemeanor of the first degree. So I wouldn't leave it out there. If I'm Jesse Nelson, I would say my doctorate degree, what was it again? My doctorate degree in leadership. My doctorate degree in leadership is from this college, which is accredited like all other colleges, and I'm a doctor. Okay, that's not too hard. But questions linger. And we're in the middle of an election. And Chief Ramey is posting somebody's past. Unbelievable. Would you agree? So, I mentioned former Councilman Hector Solis, and I do so because he claimed when he ran for office to be a retired federal law enforcement officer. I would go to the meetings. I would show him my Air Force ID, captain, right? Here it is. Let me see your badge. He didn't have one. And I found out later why. But what ended up going on when I ran for office, the same game was played. I ran against Arthur Cullen's candidate, Jeff McConnell, okay? WMBB jumped in with Arthur Cullen and did the same stuff, right? Hector Solis filed a bogus election complaint against me, saying that I had violated campaign finance laws. Yeah, and WMBB said, oh, let's do a big report on it. Watch.
City councilman files an elections complaint against a candidate currently running for a seat on the council. Hector Solis taking the action against Burnie Thompson. As News 13's Aaron Morgan tells us, Solis claims Thompson has violated campaign finance laws.
Panama City Beach City Councilman Hector Solis filed the elections complaint against Ward 3 Council candidate Burnie Thompson last month. According to Solis, Thompson is a local media personality and has been advertising for his campaign on his website without reporting the donations to the Bay County Supervisor of Elections.
He has been advertising his campaign on his media page, which he charges for advertisement. He has charged other candidates that have run elections in the past. He's charged them for those services. Yet he's given them to himself for free.
But Thompson, who was unaware of the complaint until we called him, also says he's unaware of breaking any rules.
I don't know what he's talking about. And I'll tell you, again, as I say, I've been working with the Supervisor of Elections office very closely. I call them all the time. Make sure I'm following the rules. Make sure I'm doing everything right, because I know that I'm going to receive more scrutiny than the other candidates.
The Florida Elections Commission is investigating Solis's complaint. Thompson has had an ongoing dispute with Solis over Solis's career with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. Both men say despite their differences, it will not affect their working relationship if Thompson is elected in April.
If Burnie Thompson's elected, then at that point it's about the business of the city. There's going to be times I may agree with them, other times I may disagree with them. So, but when we're up on the dais, we need to be professional and make sure that we're moving the city forward.
Hector Solis and I, and Mayor Mike Thomas and I, we can all work together as long as they're professional and as long as we treat each other with respect and we don't call each other names. We can all work together.
In Panama City Beach, Aaron Morgan, News 13.
Councilman Solis sent Thompson a cease and desist letter over what he calls Thompson's slanderous accusations about his Bureau of Prisons career. He says he also plans to file a lawsuit claiming Thompson never responded to the cease and desist.
Do you want to know what the cease and desist letter was? It was an email from Hector Solis himself. He sent me an email, and WMBB said that I received a cease and desist letter. For what? Asking him? So that led to a lawsuit. By the way, do you want to know what happened with that? This did. After the election was over, it was legally insufficient. Of course it was. It was ridiculous. Mark Anderson, supervisor, if WMBB had contacted Supervisor of Elections Mark Anderson, they would have known that. But they didn't, because Arthur Cullen's candidate, Jeff McConnell, and WMBB do this all the time. This is a pattern and a trend. Now, I wanted to win because if I had won, you'd know what the government knows in Panama City Beach. But my life would have been a lot worse if I was a city councilman. I couldn't do this, really. I would have done it, though. I tried to do it. I was embarrassed when I lost. But what they did, they're doing again now. And I want you to know this. I actually confronted the council about it. I'll show you what I did when I went to the council right after that.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Number two, Councilman Hector Solis, your complaint that you took to the media, to the Elections Commission. No,
Mr. Thompson.
This has to do with my name.
Listen to me for just a second.
No, will you please stop the timer?
Please.
The city council accused me of breaking election laws, and I'm going to clear it up right now.
Listen.
And I'm going to submit this to the council.
That would be fine, and it'll give us time to look at
I
it.
would love to speak with you. I'm glad you're talking, but I'm not going to let you cut into my time.
You're not going to be able to stop me if you
The
continue.
elections.
Listen, this is about city business. Your and Councilman Solis's problems have nothing to do with
Sir, the
city
city
business.
council
If you have,
accused me of
you said you had
violating
4
elections
questions.
violations.
Go to
This is
number
the
3.
second one.
Go to
No, I will
number
not
3.
go to number 3. The city council accused me of violating elections laws, and the elections commission said that was not so. And I'm curious why Councilman Hector Solis made these accusations without even going to the supervisor of elections first. The city council, by virtue of Hector Solis, accused me of something that the state said was untrue, and you will account to that by me submitting that. And I'd like that in the record, please. Number 3.
So there's a history in this county of crooked cities coordinating with their public-private partner, WMBB, news director Tom Lewis, Huey Lewis and the News, to make up false allegations against people. And they weren't even done. They weren't done yet. He also sued me. You're going to love this part, what I did. He also sued me, and WMBB jumped into action in the middle of the campaign. And they said this.
Candidate in regards to what he's calling slanderous attacks. Councilman Hector Solis and former Ward 3 candidate Burnie Thompson were in court this morning. As News 13's Kelly Grossfield tells us, the two have a history with each other.
A motion hearing held Wednesday morning in a civil lawsuit brought by Beach Councilman Hector Solis. Solis claiming the defendant, Burnie Thompson, maliciously tried to hurt his reputation by spreading lies about his character and work history. Thompson saying that it is not libel or slander if it's a matter of opinion.
Councilman Solis has not stated a claim of actual malice as required by New York Times v. Sullivan. It's further well established in Florida law that an opinion of a media personality is not actionable.
He went on to say that no actual malice was intended. Thompson says he requested information from Solis and still does not have sufficient evidence to satisfy his request. But Solis begs to differ.
He reached out himself to the agency which knows of my employment. He asked the question, he was answered the question. At that point, it was his duty to stop the charade.
Solis says Thompson continued to attack him online even after a cease and desist letter was issued. But Thompson states it's his right.
The First Amendment to the Constitution guarantees my freedom of speech, especially political speech. It also guarantees my freedom of the press as a journalist, and it guarantees the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Solis battling back that the First Amendment doesn't cover the accusations Thompson is stating.
That doesn't allow him to say anything he wants when it comes to the fact that he may allege that someone is not a law enforcement officer and then go ahead and constantly state that somebody is violating state and federal law.
In Panama City, Kelly Grossfield, News 13.
Now, Thompson moved for the case to be dismissed. The court is yet to make a ruling. If the case is not dismissed, it is expected to go to trial in late January.
So WMBB and cities have a history of attacking candidates running against Arthur Cullen, who is hired by the establishment to do what they're doing. Now, that, you know what happened? So was I right or was I wrong? Hector Solis, were you a retired federal law enforcement officer? Well, he sued me, so I was able to subpoena him. I'm going to try and share this with you. And here's 46 seconds of my deposition of Hector Solis. I didn't have an attorney, so I had to do it myself. And it went like this.
Did you ever tell anybody that you were a maintenance man, or that you did maintenance work or electrical work while you were employed with the federal government?
I'm qualified, yes, and that I was a journeyman electrician.
Okay. Is that a law enforcement officer?
In the capacity of Federal Bureau of Prisons, yes.
What do you mean?
In that all people hired by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, when they go through the academy, are all federal law enforcement. Because we are all considered primary correctional officers first in our actual occupation second.
So he was an electrician. Now that's news, but WMBB didn't report that because they protect these politicians just like they're doing again in Lynn Haven. Do you know, I learned a lot more. Should I show you? I'll show you just a little bit of it. I learned that Councilman Hector Solis, well, there was an incident in Texas, and a black family had racial graffiti written on their home. It said, "Go home, N-words." I asked Councilman Hector Solis if he was involved in that. Now, if I were to ask you if you were involved in writing "Go home, N-words" on a black family's home, what would you say? Exactly. Of course not. This racist incident took place. I asked him about it under oath, and he won't answer me. His lawyer won't let him answer. His lawyer, by the way, quit 3 weeks later. And the news media, WMBB, wouldn't report this.
So I'm not sure. I don't know. When did you go to school? Once again, I said between probably 2010 and 2012. Now, do you know if anybody ever wrote on Ernest Walker's home, "Go home, N-words"? Yes, I do know about that. Tell me about that. What happened? He's a black American. He is. He's an African American. And did he just move into the neighborhood, or had he lived there for a while? This is in Texas. Correct. It was a location that he was utilizing, and I was trying to get his business, help him with his business, get it off the ground. What kind of business did he have? He was renting out a specific location as a wedding venue. Okay. And he endured this racism?
I'm going to object, Mr. Thompson. I don't know what these questions are, why you're asking about Ernest Walker and his time in Texas.
Well,
has nothing to do with the complaint.
Well, it's mentioned in the small claims court.
Yes, he mentioned that he was a small claims court. What does that, besides the lawsuit in small claim, what does your question have to do with this lawsuit?
Are you objecting to the relevance or to the form?
I'm objecting to both of it. I mean, you can show the point you're trying to get to. I mean, these are just random questions. It seem to be random questions that don't have any relevance to this case.
So I understand. Are you instructing me not to answer these questions?
You can rephrase the question.
Okay. My question is, do you know who these individuals were that wrote that on his home? No. But you're familiar with the incident? Yes, it was very unfortunate. Were you involved in the incident?
Object to the form. Object only answer the question. No relevance. And extended leads to Fifth Amendment.
And are you claiming Fifth Amendment on this?
No, I'm claiming this is irrelevant.
Okay. If this were to go toward political retaliation and a trend, would that hold? And remember, please, I am a pro se defendant. You certainly know the legal path, and I know you can't advise me. But if
if there's political retribution, if there's a trend of that, of reprisal with Councilman Hector Solis, maybe this lawsuit is part of that to shut me up. And maybe if he has a history of doing things like this to people he doesn't agree with, wouldn't that be relevant?
Okay, you can ask the questions. Again, I'm not going to answer your questions because I'm not being.
I understand.
You're right. I can't give you legal advice. I can tell you what I'm doing relevant, what I'm instructing my client to answer my case. And if we don't disagree, then we can go for early termination. I think that's termination.
Well, my question is, were you involved in that incident at all?
Again, I'm struggling.
Okay, I'll move on. Okay, I'll move on.
And that's how that went. That should be news. But WMBB ignores that. WMBB kept saying, Burnie Thompson must be lying about him. No, I wasn't lying about him. And I won the case. You know, I'm not a lawyer, but I play one in real life. There's been 2 of these filed against me, and they're both very sorry they did it. Let's put it that way. We should have had 500 people at the next city council meeting demanding that somebody who can't deny that under oath be removed from office. I can't believe how many people will post a box on social media, a black box, and say, oh, lift black voices, love black people, but you won't stand up for them when we find real incidents like this. WMBB sure as hell wouldn't. They were too busy covering it up, and they're doing it again. It's another smear tactic. They want to say, oh, a mayoral candidate was arrested, as though that defines her. Give me a break. So those are very big deals. If a public figure sues you for defamation, you get to find out a lot of stuff. And we did. Now, I'll tell you back to this story and back to Arthur Cullen's candidate that WMBB is working with, along with the crooked city officials in Lynn Haven, the top ones, posting on social media, the police chief post, after she had already said that it happened. I sure hope that enough Bay County voters are tired of politics of personal destruction and want to get to policy over personality. But I'll tell you one thing. They also, by the way, violated election, I forget what it's called, literature. They sent an illegal postcard, Arthur Cullen's team. Arthur Cullen and Jeff McConnell say they don't know who did it. I have a feeling I do. I think Derwin White paid for it. I think Todd Neves made it, and I think they shipped out from Miami about 1,000 of them. 1,000 illegal postcards in the U.S. mail. That violates Florida Statute 106.071. There was no paid for buy. And they were one letter off from City Hall. Oh, these people are dirty. Arthur Cullen and his people are dirty. And, you know, he should be the last one to talk. Arthur Cullen is the shadow publisher of the county press, the mugshot tabloid. Could you imagine if you ran for mayor and your campaign manager was the shadow publisher of the county press, the mugshot rag, which is precisely why he has the county press. He has all mugshots in Bay County. So if you ever run for office, boy, oh, he'd never do it. You know, it's dirty and could you imagine being a shadow publisher of a mugshot rag when you are the last one on earth who should be talking about being arrested? I never wanted to do this, but now I have to. The campaign manager for Jesse Nelson running for mayor, that's friends with WMBB, running this hit piece with the Lynn Haven officials, Chief Ramey. In 2006, the police tried to pull him over Do you want to see what happened? What you're going to see is a 2006 dash cam of the Panama City Police Department trying to catch Arthur Cullen, who got a DUI, and he thought he could outrun the cops. This is Arthur Cullen. That's the guy who makes fun of people who get arrested now. That's the campaign manager working with WMBB and Chief Ramey to smear a mayoral candidate. Politics of personal destruction. Well, he tried to explain to the officer that the last time this happened, you know, they were a lot nicer about it. He was charged with felony fleeing and eluding, 2 counts of resisting arrest without violence, a DUI, and driving without a license. Here he is trying to explain it.
I'm just trying to. What helped me last time was that I was friendly and I did everything everybody asked me to do. And everybody's told me that I was an idiot then, but it really helped me then.
It's up to you, man.
I don't know. This is my issue. Tomorrow, it's going to be all over the news. And I just need to know if
I don't think you're going to be all over the news tomorrow.
I think I am. I really think.
I don't think. Regardless if you take the test or not, I'm still charging you with DUI.
Sure.
Okay? So, I mean, it's up to you.
I do not want to be mean to you.
You know something. I'm ready.
I'm sorry.
I'm ready.
For my best interest. Godly.
All I need for you to do is take yes or no and sign your name right there.
What's the felony, can I ask?
Fleeing and eluding. When the lights and the sirens on, you want to stop. That's charging with fleeing, felony, fleeing and eluding, DUI, 2 counts of resisting without violence, and driving while your license is suspended.
What are the 2 counts?
And I ran up to the car, and we were both going stop, stop, stop. He looked at us and just said, "The hell with y'all," and took off. And then when I was getting you out of the car, I kept trying to get you to go to the ground. You wouldn't go to the ground.
But I did.
After I gently placed you on the ground.
I got right out and went straight to the ground.
You're not guilty of these. You're just being charged for them. Those are misdemeanor. I'm being worried about the penalty.
And you know what? That doesn't define Arthur Cullen. That's not, that's his bad moment. Well, we all have a bad moment. You got to see mine when I ran for office because they called me a deadbeat dad. And they put flyers on every car at my kids' school because I had the gall to run for city council in Panama City Beach. That's what Arthur Cullen and those guys did, and Jeff McConnell. They say they didn't do it. I mean, they can always sue me and accuse me of defamation. You know, we can get to the bottom of it. This is a trend, and it's again happening. That's why I'm showing you all of this. That doesn't define Arthur Cullen. But what he's doing now and continues to do with the politics of personal destruction when his campaigns are tight are unacceptable. But you know what's even more unacceptable is WMBB violating the public trust of its viewers. Don't you think did WMBB ever report to you that Hector Solis was an electrician and not a federal law enforcement officer? Did they ever tell you that he wouldn't deny? No. And now they're doing all these things again with Arthur Cullen and the two top officials of Lynn Haven, the city manager and the chief of police. Chief Ramey should resign for what he did today. Am I right or wrong? I can't do much more than show you everything. Now, here's the way I'll wrap it up tonight. And the reason that I'm so interested in the Lynn Haven election, because we deserve honest elections. We deserve honest government. We deserve top city officials who don't have public-private partnerships, and they really don't in Lynn Haven. But Arthur Cullen's awful tight with news director Tom Lewis. This wasn't a news story. It was a hit piece. But as a community, as you and me, we should rise above this. We should take the approach that Ryan Scray takes with his 2.8 thousand, more than 10% of the population of Lynn Haven. There's a page on Facebook where he tries to talk about the policies, and he can't wait for the elections to end because he really wants to talk about the restaurants and the schools and culture and art and the things that make life beautiful. And we shouldn't have all of that tarnished and tainted with the policy, with the politics of personal destruction. We should rise above this in Bay County. That's what I want to see. When campaigns get dirty, let me put it this way, if it were more painful to run dirty campaigns with your shadow troops, they might do less of it. That's all. We got to hold Lynn Haven officials accountable too. Elections ought to be about policy, don't you think? And not just smear tactics. All right, I should have done this earlier. I always forget to do this. But don't you think people ought to know this? And the news, they're not going to tell them, the news outlets. So I hope that you'll tag your friends. I hope that you'll like and follow the page. I'm also doing this live on YouTube. I'm just kind of getting going really on YouTube. And so if you were to follow me on YouTube, I'd be thrilled about it. The reason I can tell you all these things is because I'm independent. I was fired for it. I was sued for it, but no matter. No matter. The truth will have its day. And it's because enough of you support me either through sponsorships or what they call crowdfunding, like you could become a patron, which is, by the way, easy, anonymous. It's anonymous, so people won't know who you are. Burnie, we can't talk to you. Okay, we got to eventually link arms if we're going to clean the place up. Wouldn't you agree? So I hope that you'll consider becoming a patron. And I hope that you won't let dirty politics influence how you're going to vote. I really hope we turn things around. All right, thanks for being with me. And I'll be back when I get something to tell you.